Over to Lawton Ave?
Yep.
Let's do it. So you're saying I should drop you off at the end of the hill?
Oh God,
You're like, I paid a lot of money for this. I'm ready to go all the way.
no. Dude, paid $20
Oh my gosh.
for a Uber in Auburn, New York. Really?
Oh man, well.
And you're probably only getting 10.
I got 8.
Wow.
I know.
That's up.
It's true. He paid right around $20 and I received $8. This video is to explain Uber's take rate. I'm going to use data from Professor Lynn Sherman at Columbia University, some consumer reports and Watchdogs, and even my own data. But I just think there's a lot more to the Uber take rate story. Hi, my name is Levi Spires. This is the Tip You in the App Daily Drive podcast. Today's Daily Drive podcast is brought to you by the Gig You app. I want Uber to succeed. I want Uber to win. I'm a happy Uber driver, and I think that Uber driving has basically been the best job I've ever had. This video, this podcast, is for Uber's leadership, the board, investors, Jason Calacanis. Also, I just want to caveat that GigU has been a longtime sponsor. Lynn Sherman at Columbia is a friend, but this is my video. Nobody's seen any of this before. I'm publishing it. And yeah, so I'm using my own data and my own conclusions here. Now, let's get into it. Well, I'm describing Uber's take rate as a mental math problem. My passenger there in Auburn, New York, he just assumed I got at least half of the fare as a driver. That's the bare minimum, is the way he even said it. When I was telling my wife that I was going to produce this podcast, she assumed that I got at least half. I've been a driver for 6 years, and she was like, I thought you at least got half. I think you're going to see in this video, in this breakdown, that the take rate is complex because of variable algorithmic pricing. That complexity leads to confusion, and confusion leads to a lack of trust. And that's why this take rate conversation really matters. So Uber reports a global take rate of 21%. But when we look at the rider payments and what drivers actually receive, the take rate is offering closer to 50%. Lynn's recent analysis of nearly 50,000 trips from 3 long-term drivers shows that the take rate jumped from 15 to 50% over the past 10 years. Lynn's research connects this higher take rate and upfront pricing to Uber's big financial gains. Free cash flow rose by $10 billion between 2022 and 2025. And the stock price has increased 5x, and ride-hailing now makes up the vast majority of Uber's EBITDA. I personally analyzed 129 identical 62-mile trips from Ithaca to Syracuse Airport over the last 2-year time period. I released this data last year sometime. It was the same car, same route, same driver. It was almost right around 60 miles every single time. And passenger prices range from $79 all the way up to $168 for essentially the same exact ride. With no consistent pattern on those 129 controlled trips, UberX averaged a rider payment of about $119. The driver pay was around $60, and Uber was taking roughly $45, a 38% take rate. On comfort trips, riders paid more, but Uber's share increased 20% while my earnings only went up 15%. Uber charged the passenger 20% more for a comfort ride, but only paid me 15% more, even though I'm the one doing the comfort. That's an issue, Uber. Fix that. That's not fair. On those same identical airport trips, Uber's commercial insurance and operating fees ranged from $13 to $50, with zero correlation to the actual distance or duration of the trip. These trips all took roughly an hour and 10 minutes and were 62 miles. They were the exact same trips, yet the commercial auto insurance changed from $13 to $50, and you can't understand why. Consumer Reports released an investigation this month. And based on testing by 174 volunteers across 18 states, they found that Uber and Lyft routinely charge very different prices for the same ride requested at nearly the exact same time. The median difference between the lowest and the highest prices across 30 routes was roughly 50%. Consumer Reports discovered that nearly 11% of advertised discounts on both platforms appeared to be fake. In their Portland testing, Uber and Lyft were taking between 43 and 50% of each fare. A Consumer Watchdog report shows that Uber had built up $12.46 billion in insurance reserves by 2025, up 27% and almost double what they had in 2023. Uber self-funds nearly 95% of all of its insurance risk and has committed $10 billion to buying robotaxis while pushing for liability limiting laws. Uber, in its official response to the Consumer Reports, said this: price differences come from real-time factors like demand, driver availability, traffic, and timing, not from personalized pricing based on individual riders. Uber stands by an adjusted U.S. take rate of around 20% after insurance and called some of the testing methods by Consumer Reports unrepresentative. Okay, so there you go. There's a lot of stuff there. Let me simplify it to you from a Levi perspective. Uber uses an algorithm to figure out how much they can charge a passenger. I don't know how they do it, but sometimes passengers pay $100 for a ride. Sometimes they pay $50 for the exact same ride. We don't understand that. Then they also pay drivers variable like that too. They use the same algorithm to say some drivers will get $20, some drivers will get $25. We don't understand that. And then inside of that middle, the take, what Uber takes of that, there's taxes and Uber's profitability, but it's commercial auto insurance. And we want to stick with that theme because that's the confusing part. My current take rate is a mess. On that fare, the passenger in Auburn paid $20 and I got $8. That happens all the time. Uber would say their take rate was $7 or 36%, but that's just one ride. Let's take a look at a few other rides. Last Halloween, customers paid $44 and $34 for a really short trip. I made $38 and $34 before the tip. And the taxes were the same. Uber's margin was 80 cents one time, and they lost $6 one time. The commercial auto insurance was right around $3. So yeah, on the Auburn trip, my take rate was 40%. But on Halloween, in a college town, when there's a lot of surge pricing, I was getting 85, if not 102% of what the passenger paid. These are extremes. Let's take two more rides this week. Passenger paid $15 and $24. I got 37% and 59%. And the commercial auto insurance was right around 23%. On an individual ride, you see these wild fluctuations. So let's take a look at it on a weekly basis. Last week, my take rate was $409 or 43%, and Uber's was 22%, which matches their claim of 20%. That Halloween week, my take rate of the fare was 78% or $1,700. Uber lost $128. Their take rate was a negative 6%, which you can see the balancing. Sometimes the take rate on individual fares or individual weeks is really high. Sometimes the take rate on individual fares or individual weeks is really low. So a few rides, a few weeks, they're not the full picture. Let's look at my tax records. Last year, I did 3,294 trips. Uber collected $30,000 in service fees, which includes commercial auto insurance on $70,000 in gross payments before tips and bonuses. That works out to a 43% take rate. That's well above the 20% that Uber claims. However, my net earnings after the $15,000 in incentives was more like $49,000, which means my take rate of the $70,000 in fares that passengers paid was 70%. And Uber's take rate was 21%. The passengers paid $70,000. I got $49,000. There were taxes and fees of $6,000, and Uber's margin was $14,000 for 21%. But notice the commercial auto insurance was zero. This is where it gets really interesting. There are times when the take rate is a lot. Sometimes the take rate is a little from Uber. It could be as much as 50, 60%, if not more. Sometimes they lose money on a trip. But when we look at a fare or we look at individual weeks, Uber itemizes and clearly delineates and says, here's the commercial auto insurance line. But when I look at my taxes, they merge it all together and they call it Uber's service fee. That's where I think everything's getting interesting. So Uber tells everyone their take doesn't include commercial auto insurance. But when it comes time for me to prepare taxes and present everything to the federal government, all of a sudden they do put that in there. Okay, so the commercial auto insurance mystery. Commercial auto insurance is absurdly expensive, especially here in the state of New York. I went out and shopped for my own commercial auto insurance policy last year, and the best quote I could get was $700 a month for commercial auto insurance. And that was like barely meeting state minimums. I've never used Uber's commercial auto insurance, so I don't know how it works, but I do know that I have a $2,500 deductible. When I see the commercial auto insurance line on a fare or inside of a weekly statement, the commercial auto insurance is absurdly expensive, well beyond the $700 quote that I would get. I want to be very clear. This hypothesis, I can't prove it, but the numbers raise some questions. Let me go through what I think is happening, this commercial auto insurance accounting transaction. Uber receives a request from a passenger for a ride. They want to get from point A to point B, and that establishes the price. Then Uber says, well, we need a driver. So they go out there and they shop for drivers. There's a couple of different ways Uber does it, but ultimately they're trying logically to get the lowest price driver. I don't know how that works, but that's what happens. That's business. Now, once the driver has been selected, step 3 is to charge taxes and fees. This is where I think Uber sets its margin. If they charge the passenger $10 and they get the driver for $4 and they had to pay $1 in taxes or fees, they've got $5 remaining. I think Uber doesn't want to show they've made $5 and the driver only got $4. So what they do is they make their number a little bit less than the driver and they put the rest to commercial auto insurance. If you were to go back and look at all of my rides, I've never ever seen where Uber's service fee is more than my take. And then that's why the commercial auto insurance fluctuates. I'm not saying it's illegal or moral wrong or anything like that. I just have noticed it. And I would encourage anybody to go out there and test and find that data. Now, my take rate, a driver's take rate, is not like I get to make that money. So going back to that Auburn trip where the passenger paid $20 and I got $8, I have to pay bills out of that to be an Uber driver. Bills like fuel, electricity in my car, maintenance, tires, repairs on my vehicle, depreciation on my vehicle. Remember, I had to drive to Auburn. I didn't get a ride from my house to Auburn. A lot of times we have to deadhead miles. We have to sit parked for a long period of time waiting for a ride. Levi, you just made $8 to go a mile and get paid for a few minutes worth of work. I'm lucky the passenger gave me a beautiful, amazing $6 tip, which I am extremely grateful. But it's not like I'm getting rich. You'd think, oh, Levi, you're an Uber driver. All you got to do is get out there and drive a car. Yeah, you'd think it'd be that easy. But as I'm showing you, there are winners and losers in this game. Uber and all these gig apps present offers. They give you seconds to make a decision. It's like I could be driving in a blizzard in the middle of the night with a passenger, drunk passenger behind me in the middle of traffic, and Uber is going to flash up an offer and they're going to be like, hey, make a decision. You got 7 seconds. Make a decision. Do you want this ride? Yes or no? It's not like when you purchase something, you could sit for hours and hours and analyze it. I have to make a decision off of limited amount of information. Is this ride worth it or not? And so it's a game. The good Uber drivers know how to play the game. We make money not just on our ability to be a driver. We make money off of extracting as much profitability as we can out of Uber in the game. And I was thinking of something that's similar to it. I got really excited about the NBA finals, and I decided to open a DraftKings account. I put $25 in a DraftKings account. You're betting, you're gambling. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose some. That's what Uber driving is like. Now, again, you're like, Levi, earlier in this podcast, you said you love it. And I do. I do love it. I love being out in the city. I love the flexibility of driving when I want to drive. I can make this podcast instead of Uber driving right now. I don't have a boss. I love meeting all the people. I love providing an amazing service, being a safe driver, professional driver. And because I'm an economist and an accountant in my previous life, and I went to grad school for a lot of this stuff, I kind of like the data too. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's all right. So complexity is Uber's greatest opportunity and its biggest risk. Let me explain. Complexity in algorithmic variable pricing is good because it extracts as much revenue and profitability out of every single transaction. In fact, Uber states that, hey, milliseconds matter because if somebody orders a ride at this millisecond and this millisecond, the price changes. So we understand that's a good part to it. But here's the risk. It's AI, it's apps, robo-taxis, mathematics. It's all becoming a commodity. Today, when we want to order a ride, especially if we're drunk, we're humans and we have psychology. And Uber can use its AI and its algorithm to extract as much value out of that as they can. And they're kind of the only game in town. You might be able to find a Lyft. In a lot of places like Syracuse, you're not going to find a taxi. It's like Uber's like, we got you. Are you going to take this price, yes or no? And so they're using human psychology of desperation to some extent sometimes to get you to make a decision. But that's today. Tomorrow, we're not going to go into our phone and say, let me shop for an Uber. You're going to go to your phone and be like, order me a car. And your Siri, Claude bot, AI, LLM agent is going to go out there and shop. And it's going to shop Uber, but it's also going to shop Lyft. It's going to shop a robo-taxi and Waymo and Zoox. It's going to call taxi companies. It's going to find the exact car that meets your criteria with your budget. It doesn't have any human psychology of desperation. It's AI versus AI. And so today, Uber can make a lot of money because it's the biggest game in town and its algorithm is fighting against human psychology. But tomorrow, there's going to be a lot more competitors and AI is going to be cheap, if not free, for everybody to use, to include Uber's competitors and the passengers, the consumers shopping for a ride. That's the problem. Uber's take rate is a problem because it is complex, and how they manipulate the accounting behind it with commercial auto insurance is hard to understand. And all of this leads to a lack of trust. Now, what's the solution? I don't care what Uber's take rate is. I think my point is that everything is so complex that there's a lack of trust. Uber should build trust. And how could they do that? Through drivers. When somebody walks up to my car and they knock on the window and they're like, are you my Uber? I represent Uber. I'm not an employee. I'm an independent contractor. But to the passenger, they don't understand that. And they don't have to understand that. Uber is not taking advantage of that opportunity for me to represent Uber as a brand ambassador. All of this lack of trust, this complexity, makes me not want to be a brand ambassador for Uber. It's a hostile work environment. It's a game. I'm competing against Uber because of the game that they've set up. So the solution that I think Uber should do is not look at drivers like me with tens of thousands of rides that have been doing it for years, that have a perfect 5-star rating, that are out there representing your brand well. Lean into us. Don't look at me as a liability. Look at me as an asset. I'm not saying I even need to get more money. I think that Uber can improve things by reducing complexity, simplifying things, not making this a big game, but instead celebrating and rewarding the drivers. And I know autonomous cars are coming. I know my days are numbered as a driver. It doesn't have to end as a horrible divorce, right? It can be mutually beneficial. I don't think Uber has a greed problem. I think Uber has a complexity problem. And the data that Uber shares sends mixed messages. Commercial auto insurance is wildly expensive. My point is about trust, and see that trust can erode slowly. Passengers begin wondering why rides are so expensive, and we see that through all these reports. Drivers begin wondering where the money went. Tips become wage corrections. Eventually, both sides begin feeling manipulated, because eventually everyone will have algorithms. Everyone will have AI. Everyone will have the best mathematics, but not everyone, not every brand will have trust. And trust is not created by code or UI. It's created one ride at a time with a professional driver. So what is the best take rate for Uber? Honestly, I don't know. And I don't care what the take rate is. Which brings me back to that Auburn ride. He paid 20. He thought I got 10, but I only got 8. And the most interesting question to me isn't where the $12 went. Maybe the more important question is this: can the Uber marketplace survive when people stop trusting the math? Hey, my name is Levi Spires. This is the Daily Drive podcast. Drivers for 2026, I hope you get out there, make as much money as possible, that you're safe, healthy, and happy. Shout out to GigU, Redtiger, sponsors of this program. Yeah, Uber drivers, I'm cheering for you guys. Let's make this a mutually beneficial win-win for everybody. Hey, everybody, take care. Be well. Bye.